and sit down. So the format today is we have three amazing, just to use some cultural operators here. Anyone know what that means? So we have Aideen Howard from the ARC, who has multiple fingers in multiple European pots at the moment, so that's exciting. And we have Donna Gilligan from the National Print Museum, and Roberto, who you all know for Bratti, from La Baracca, to talk about small size. So what I've asked people to do is we're just going to give a 5 to 10 minute overview of the projects, and then we'll go into just a few kind of thought-provoking questions. This whole event is predicated on the fact that I hear from people all the time about how awful the application process is, how stressful it all is, but not a single person has ever said it wasn't worth it and they wouldn't do it again. So I'm really hoping you all prove me right again. So Aideen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm going to talk rather than present, so I'll stay where I am. And as Katie said, very happy to be as frank as possible, and I suppose to share as many of the small insights that we have gained over the past few years applying for two different kinds of projects. So I run I'm assuming that none of our international partners are here, otherwise I should know about it. I thought perhaps our Scottish colleague from Imaginate might be here, because I'll be speaking a little bit about our collaboration there. So I'll assume you know nothing about our projects, and you can set me right if that's not the case. So I run an organisation called the ARC at Temple Bar in Dublin, which is a multidisciplinary cultural centre for children. It means that we're open year round, and we commission and produce and present and receive performance, and we also make participative workshop experiences for children. So we're doing that in a range of art forms: visual art, music, theatre, dance, animation, occasionally, less often, occasionally film, sometimes literature. So we're working across a wide range of art forms, and we're working with audiences from the ages of 2 to 12. So within those art forms, of course, then there are also discrete audiences and discrete artists who we're engaging with. So we are primarily funded through the state by the Arts Council, who's our principal funder, and through the Department of Education, also to a lesser extent by the local authority, and by a certain amount of fundraising which we generate ourselves. I'm telling you that because despite our state's fantastic and radical commitment to resourcing a cultural centre for children, we find that we need partnerships outside of Ireland for all kinds of reasons. One, because we're lonely in terms of being a cultural centre for children, and that's multidisciplinary. We constantly have to seek artistic partnerships with experts in particular fields and with particular art form specialisms in Ireland, but we also like to partner outside of Ireland in order to have access to all sorts of practice that we wouldn't have on our own terms. So that's one good reason. The other good reason, I suppose, is that we're interested in creating and being part of a network for Irish artists in order to expand the pool of artists and the knowledge of artists who are making work for children, all those art forms. And finally, and extremely importantly, we're also interested in finding additional sources of financial revenue for the projects that we want to run. So there are lots of really good reasons why we should be looking for partnerships in Europe, and some of them happen more easily than others, and some of them happen more organically than others. So I'll give you a sense of the project that we are successfully running at the moment, and also the two other projects that we have just recently completed applications for in January, on the 18th of January. So we're fresh out of that process, so I can talk to you about that if that's helpful as well. We're running a project called the PUSH project, which is an artist development endeavour. It's led by a Scottish partner in the form of Imaginate, and we're one of 4 other partners with Denmark, Norway and Belgium, and together we're running a 2-year artist development project around artists who wish to make performance, so maybe music or theatre, for children. And the themes in which we have decided to focus our energies are gender, migration, and the sometimes oblique description of overprotection, which is this idea, I suppose, that we constrain our children in terms of their geographical and psychological and emotional reach. So this is a project that has been running for nearly 2 years now. We're halfway through it. The next step of the project will be for the ARC in Dublin to host a 10-day lab for 14 international artists who have come through those 5 partner countries. We'll run a lab in February time, which will be led by an Irish artist called Veronica Coburn, who'll spend 10 days working with those artists on developing expertise, knowledge, information, and then throwing that all aside and trying to explore how artists might actually consider the theme of migration in work for children. How do you do that? Should you do that? What approach might you take to that? And how might you apply, I suppose, all of your considerations of age, experience, and so on? How would you put that to a particular audience? So that project has been running, as I say, for nearly, it'll be over at the end of August. It'll finish up at the end of a successful 2-year period. And the project was so, I suppose, inspiring for the participants that the partners suggested that we would make a secondary application, which has just happened. And the idea is that this would build on the artist development ideas of the first project, but that it would also build on some of the themes. So the themes will be different, the practice will be different, but it'll still be all about artist development for people who are interested in making work for children.
And I think just that's one thing I think that a lot of people don't realise about Creative Europe, but actually there's a lot of kind of sectoral benefit as well. You know, it's not necessarily all about kind of performance, it is about kind of professional development of artists and expanding their careers so that they can, you know, that they can come out of these projects in a better place. And that's something that I think has been very positive in Creative Europe.
Yeah. Prior to these 2 applications that we just made, the ARC was the beneficiary of one of the things that you mentioned earlier, which was the co-funding arrangement, which was extremely encouraging and took some of the edge of the organisation's nervousness about being able to commit financially to a project like that, which was also extremely helpful at board level for an organisation who wasn't quite sure what the financial commitments and constraints of a European project might be. And although that outlay was relatively small for the organisation, it did also give the organisation courage to do a much bigger project application, which we've also just completed, which is for a 4-year project, the total budget of which will be 1.9 million. And that's a 4-year project with 11 organisations to be part of a festival called the Big Bang Adventurous Music Festival for Children. Lots of you may be familiar with that project, and I can talk a little bit more about that. It's also illuminating for me, having just gone through these 2 recent application projects, that just because you're applying for 1.9 million versus 200,000, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's any more complex. And obviously the reverse is also true. So we were a little bit nervous about putting ourselves in a situation where we would be completing 2 European project applications on the same day. But there are, surprisingly, I didn't predict this, but there are surprisingly economies of scale. There's a great deal of bureaucratic paperwork that needs to be done in any case. So whether you're doing 1 or 2, that was kind of an interesting learning that came out of that for us. Well, if they were successful, or if one of the projects was successful, it would certainly be beneficial. So I suppose a lot of the broader bureaucratic stuff has to happen one way or another.
I think like anything else, it's, you know, it's giving yourself enough lead-in time. I think that's probably
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that we can talk about a little bit later is that I noticed in our second, the large-scale project, we are now the only native English-speaking country. That's interesting. We have found that there was a lot that we could take for granted with our Scottish lead partner, who were doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of application and linguistic and so on, which is interesting, because that hasn't been the case with our second project. So happy to share any of that. learning, and we won't know whether we've been successful in either of those for some time.
So Donna, do you want to
have the presentation?
Oh, yeah.
I just have to, I think it's Roberto's that has been lined up first, so I just want to.
Or
Yeah, is it Roberto's that is lined up first?
Roberto, do you want to go first then?
No, that's fine, I just want to, is that when they're going?
No problem.
That's great. My name is Donna Gilligan. I'm the Education Officer for the National Print Museum in Beggars Bush and Ballsbridge. We're a small museum dedicated to the preservation and exhibition of the printing craft, and our focus is mainly on traditional letterpress printing. We have quite a unique museum because our museum collection isn't behind glass or rope. It's actually a working collection, and we bring it to life for workshops and for demonstration days all the way throughout the year. So in that respect, we're a unique museum. We're the only one of our type in Ireland and the British Isles. And basically what we do is we champion print and its impact on the world. So today I'm going to be talking about the Creative Makers project, which we actually started on back in 2017, and we're still at quite an early stage in it. We're not actually at the halfway point yet, so it's still quite an introduction what I'm going to be giving today. It's basically, the project is co-funded by Creative Europe, and there's 4 participating international partners, and I'll come back to those. The idea is that it aims to innovate the traditional craft sectors of letterpress and printing through the co-creation of 4 themed Kids Fab Labs. So creative spaces for children inspired by the newest approaches in tinkering, making and the Fab Lab movement. For people not necessarily familiar with Fab Labs, because the main reaction I've got when I've told people about this is that sounds very nice, but what exactly is Fab Lab? Fab Lab is a small digital fabrication laboratory, a workshop with computer-controlled tools which can be used to make designs and physical objects. And in our case, it will also be very much influenced by the maker movement, by tinkering and making. The Creative Makers partners and 4 selected artists, so there'll be 1 artist per partner, aims to co-create new innovative and interactive workshops which are tailored for school and family groups. So we do have a target audience in mind. We have schools which age groups of 6 to 7 and 8 to 11, and for families age groups of 3 to 5, 6 to 7 and 8 to 11. The Fab Labs will be places where children will have the opportunity to experiment with the artisanal tradition of letterpress and printing alongside modern digital fabrication techniques. So just to talk about our partners, we have 3 other partners. The first one, the lead partner is Explora in Rome, which is a children's museum. Then there's Neapolis in Villanova in Spain, which is a centre for innovation, which does a lot of work with children's Fab Labs. And then Baboró in Tallinn in Estonia, which is a traditional paper mill and printing company. So Baboró and ourselves are generally we're the letterpress experts in the actual project, and the other 2 are experts in children's education and in Fab Lab development. Just to talk a little bit quickly about how we actually ended up on the project, but I can go back to that later. One of the things that when the project was being put together by Explora, the lead partner, they were looking for an organisation which had, I suppose, a niche expertise in letterpress printing and children's education. And they actually found us online, and one of the things we really learned from this project is that it's very important to have a good online presence of what you do as a cultural organisation, because they actually found out a lot about our children's education programme by our online presence. We do an awful lot of work with children's families and school groups. About 30% of our visitor range falls within this group, and it's rising every year. So we would have a lot of workshops and special days which are geared towards children around the age groups that I'd mentioned earlier on. We do a lot of interactive tours, we do children's workshops throughout the year, and family fun days and demonstration days. We also do quite a bit of outreach work where we have a pop-up print shop that we bring on the road to festivals and special events, and we teach children how to print letterpress posters. So Explora was very interested in this and decided that with our combination of expertise in letterpress printing and children education that we would make a good partner, and they approached us to come on board. To talk briefly just about our transnational workshops, one of the main ways that we collaborate over the project is through transnational workshops, where we travel across to different organisations to their locations, and we take part in skills transfers workshops. So we have had only 2 so far. We've had our original kick-off meeting in Rome back last September, and then this December we had the group come to visit us at the National Print Museum, where we had 2 days of workshops. And basically what happened was that we taught them all of our educational activities. So we went through things like children's bookmaking, printers hat making, experimental letterpress, and we showed them exactly what we teach to children of that age in order to give them inspiration and to kind of give them an idea of what could be involved in the final output. The eventual output for each of the organisations is to have a concrete fab lab in place in the organisation, and to have workshops that revolve around that tie into letterpress printing and fabrication. Just to finish off, the future for creative makers. So what we want to accomplish is a fab lab in a traditional printing museum, a new way of interacting with our collections, new technology, new audiences, new collaborations, and advances in our museum's network and brand. And we hope that will all be achieved within the project. We have future transnational workshops coming up in Tallinn and Villanova and Rome in early to mid 2018. The next stage after that then will be the setup and trial of our children's fab labs and workshops in the 4 venues, and by late 2018 that should be ready to go. The official opening and promotion of the fab labs then will be in February 2019, and that's our project end. So at the moment, as I said, we're about midway through the project, so I don't have something more concrete to show you in terms of what we're developing. Our next trip to Tallinn in Estonia will be in April, which is when we're going to put together some concrete ideas of what we can actually achieve and what we'll put into our workshops. So to finish with that, just to say thank you to Creative Ireland for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
You have the presentation.
Yeah. To talk about an European project, I think that is not so easy to synthesize in a short PowerPoint, because an European project, a cooperation project is more and more that only what happened, because it's what happened before and what happened after the project. It is a question of a lot of problems, but also a lot of opportunities. Are involved the partners, but are involved also a lot of other subjects that across the project, that meet the people of the project, and so. And I think that I am absolutely available if you are interested to talk about this and about happen in this year with the European project called Small Size. But to give the first impression, I present you a very short PowerPoint, like this, about Small Size Performing Arts. Also because this fantastic festival, I need a long finger. Okay, this fantastic festival is in the frame of Small Size Performing Arts. It's one of the most important activity of this project, and so we are in our house now. Small Size is a large cooperation project, and the aim, is dedicated to children between 0 to 6 years of age, with particular attention to children under 36 months, a real current node audience. This is our audience. You know, but it's better to remember. Wide eyes. It is a networking project involving theaters and cultural institutions and centers that have been focusing their artistic research on children, not only early years, on children, adolescents, and young people, and that have developed a real and specific professional competence in the field of performing arts for early years. It promotes audience development, in particular the development of children spectators, making performing gas approach areas both in Europe and out of Europe. Children, even the youngest one, have the right to be viewed and as spectators of today and not only of tomorrow. This, I think, that is the most important concept of small size. It's participates to the call 2014, a lot of time ago, of Creative Europe, a category large cooperation project. This is very important to distinguish also the large cooperation project from the small, because are different the character of the two lines, of the two categories, and you can find benefit different in one or the other. And so I think that we have good the idea how to select one or the other, because a small project, a small cooperation project is not small for quality. It's more for a lot of element, is larger, have other problematic, but also other opportunities. It is between the 21 projects selected in the call 2014, and with a score, because the score is very important, 89 on 100. The project began in October 2014, and it will be end in September, this September. It's involved 70 theater and cultural center of 15 countries. You can read directly. This is very important because it's a large geographical area. It's the north, the south, the east, the ovest. And for us, this is very important. It's not characterized by a particular area. It's not Mediterranean. It's not Scandinavian. It's not. But we are all in the different part of Europe. La Baracca was the coordinator of this project. The project 2014-2018, it isn't the first small-size project. This is a particular thing. Supported by the cultural programs of the European Union. Before, other three small-size projects was supported by the cultural program. I think that is not unique, but so an element of particularity.
I feel like, just to interject, I mean, what the EU want are kind of projects that are sustainable and last and have lasting impact. And one of the ways that happens is kind of forming, funding iteration after iteration. So you do kind of see. I mean, this is probably one of the best examples of that, because I'd say you're probably in the top of having been funded that many times.
Science, so because we thought before that was not possible. It's all the time was a surprise. We started in 2005. We as the last before this was in 2009, 2014, and we were 12 partners of 12 countries. In 2006, 2009 was the culture program. We were 7 partners of 7 countries, and the first was an annual project. Only it was a small project, and to start was fantastic, because if you want to start for a long project, to start with an annual project is perfect, because give it really relevance to your partnership. So, and we were only 4 partners of 4 countries. Now some economic data, because we have a larger project. You can read the budget, the grant, and the financing, because there is the financing and the co-financing. These are the activity. There are a lot of activity inside, because it was a project, a networking project, partner activities, festival, very important, because the festival was the meeting point for the partners, and to enlarge this experience to a lot of other subjects that are all the members of this new network that is small size, new because is increasing, because from the 2007 is continuously increasing, and tomorrow in the afternoon you have like a meeting that is talk about the growing of small size. And lots of showcases, production and co-production. And new network activities, common meetings, website, book, documentation. And then a lot of joint activities. The Wide Eyes co-production project that you find here. The small size days every year at the last weekend of January. Everywhere in the different city and town, and not only of the project, but also out of the project, we have the small size days, 3 days dedicated to the small children, because arts is not a question of age, but a question of curiosity. This is the slogan of Small Size Days. Mentoring. Yesterday, my colleague talk about mentoring, with presenting a lot of experience. The artistic director meetings, that also we have tomorrow a moment about this experience where a lot of directors indagated on different points, and then support the network Small Size, interactive learning platform, mobiles for training and exchange, and the last is Small Size final event in Galway 2018. Thank you.
I have a few questions that I've written down as prompts, but I just want to say, because we're probably, I'm not sure about the time, so we probably don't have a huge amount of time, but if people want to kind of have a question as this is going on, please do that. So I guess my first question to kind of throw it out is, and this could relate to, when you were kind of developing the partnerships, like Donna was saying, she was approached kind of out of the blue. But like, what has been one of the biggest or some of the biggest challenges during this process, either through kind of making your partnership or the application, or indeed administering a project? Does something kind of stand out as, something that could be a red flag for people to keep an eye out for? Or do you want to start on that?
Yeah, I suppose our main one really is purely staffing. There are only 2 full-time people working in our museum, and I'm half of that. So when we were originally approached, we had to work very hard to convince the museum board that it was actually something worthwhile pursuing, because the amount of time and effort that was involved for the application alone, it was actually quite a big gamble that there was a good chance that something might not even have come out of it at the end. So we did go ahead with it, and we were very lucky that it did come through for us, but even now it's a massive amount of work when you consider how much we already have to contend with. So that is something that we come back to again and again, that it's trying to balance that work and to keep things ticking over.
I mean, I think in some ways, there's the easy way and the hard way, and the easy way to kind of sell it or for it to work is if it's something you want to do anyway. So it's in your kind of, it's in your planning, it's in, and you can kind of say, and this is actually kind of helping us do that. And where it is difficult is where it's something in addition to an already full, kind of program, and you're having to say, okay, we're allocating 20% staff time from this person to this project, but it could actually just be increasing their workload. So you do have to balance it and say, is this something we want to do anyway? And it can be brilliant.
We are delighted that we took it on, and it is a great thing, but there are times that the day-to-day running of the museum has to come ahead of it, and that has to take a back seat in between. So yeah, it's something I suppose to take into account, but we hope it will definitely be really worthwhile for us in the end.
And I guess giving it the space to happen, when you're kind of planning your timeline, that you're kind of saying, okay, maybe it does need 3 years, or maybe it does. Maybe do one this.
In terms of the existing push project, the relationship building within those partners precedes me. So this time around, the single greatest challenge, I think, to this new application and to building a new project for which to apply was Brexit, without a doubt. But the concerns, the confusions, the complications around Brexit and the uncertainty that came with that meant that this application was happening much more suddenly and in a much more rushed fashion than it might otherwise have happened in. And yet that became the really compelling reason to do it, and to do it in a rush. So it'll be interesting to see how that affected the overall process and the overall outcome. But I think I don't think we were the only organisation contending with that, but it's definitely a feature.
I mean, I think there was a lot of confusion around it in terms of, how many more deadlines could the UK apply under, or what would be honoured or what wouldn't, and it has actually been subsequently clarified to say that the UK is eligible for the rest of the programme, and actually the project, the commitment to the project will be honoured for the duration of the project. But you came in that time where it looked like this could have been the last deadline, and that was a challenge. And Roberto will be here. You'll have many, many,
No,
many examples.
No, I think that no, it's too difficult to synthesize. But, I think that the problem is really to find a good balance between the different approach of the partners, and really to find a good partnership, not only to create the project in the real structure, the activities, this change, all the elements that give a character to the project, but also a good and open relationship from the administrative and management point of view. I think that can't exist in an European project if there is not a real cooperation. And cooperation means that you have a good support from all the partners. If you have not a good support from one or two, it's okay, but in a project like us, we are satisfied that really the majority, practically all the partners that give a fantastic support from the administrative point of view. And also the idea that you are not you are not competitor.
Yeah.
And this is very important. But this is a result. Is not the starting point. To work together and not be in a competitive situation. Because if we enlarge, if we reach the goals of the project, I think that the benefits are for all the partners, and I think also for a lot of other subjects. But the idea that to create an atmosphere, not competitive atmosphere, is one of the first things that we have to create in a partnership.
I'm going to use another quite hateful or European phrase, but they'll say exchange of competencies amongst the partners. So what they often like to see are partners that actually have a range of skills that aren't necessarily the same across all of them, and there's that kind of continual learning from each other. So it is kind of thinking about when you're kind of developing a project and when you're looking at the budget, you're saying who can do what, and and that you're not all, as Roberta said, competing over things. And then I think the thing that struck me about small size when you were showing the kind of all the different iterations was I would guarantee that partnership grew quite organically as everything was happening.
Yeah. And there's 4, 7, 12,
yeah.
but the 4 are also in this project.
Yeah.
Also the 7, also the 12.
Yeah.
And I think that you have no fear that to share part of your experience.
Yeah.
Your know-how is available.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the most important things of an European project, to have this challenge and also to this possibility.
Because I think, I often say it's just a terrible metaphor, but when you do this project, you are figuratively in bed with these people for, up to 4 years. So to kind of, the work you probably have to put in before you even apply to kind of just build trust, across for everyone. Let's see what other questions I had here. Does anyone have a question from the audience? Over. Oh, yeah.
So interesting, you're saying that Aidan's done a print museum.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting and fascinating. And doing the project with Fab Lab and really is there aiming to have digital fabrication technologies brought in to Fab Lab? Is that an addition? And actually buying equipment and building that capacity?
Yes, that's part of the project itself, that in the budget is the means to purchase all the Fab Lab equipment. And at the moment we are discussing whether it's going to be installed on a permanent basis within the museums and institutions, or whether we would actually put it into something like a bus where you could actually transport it, move it around and bring that kind of facility to other places. Ourselves in the National Print Museum, we have a very small floor space, and the thought of putting in something like, like a vinyl cutter or, a good sized 3D printer, we have very limited space, so that might be something that would work for us. But all of the equipment, will be purchased, and yes. So obviously within the realms of the project, it's based around families and children, but later on down the line, we think it would be great to be able to involve students and families, adults, and kind of broaden the range of people who could use that Fab Lab within the museum.
Yeah. we have another.
Yeah, can I ask a question about co-financing, the match funds that were needed for any of your successful or pending bids, which was, I think, it's for smaller projects, it's about 4% match funding, and the big projects 50%. And I wanted to ask if any of the partners had difficulty finding the money from within their own country to participate, or and whether you, if they have difficulty, whether you were able to subsidise a partner that had less match funding. Anything, all of
yeah.
them could be that.
I suppose in our respect we're a charity and we would not have had the money to kind of invest in it, so we have been subsidised by the partners in that it was 70-30 the award of funding, and it's our work time is actually our contribution towards it, our hours for work, or what that's our contribution. So it's a certain number of work hours that we have contributed towards the project itself, because we wouldn't have had the funds to put in. When we were approached, it was something that we would have had to talk to them about. That yeah, I suppose that's our approach. But
I think that is to create an European project is not a question so only to find some partners, but is a problem to build a partnership. To build a partnership means to know the other and to clarify from the beginning also the economical terms. For this, I think that in our path we have always a discussion before, and we find good partners that we have just collaboration before, and the other partner bring new partner because there is like a confidence. And so the economical discussion was so easy because it was clear from the beginning. They decide to accept or not, knowing which are the conditions. And this is very important because sometimes I read, okay, I am searching, looking for some partner for my partner, but it's not useful. I have to know who are in front of me, who is my partner in the future. And if you have a good partnership, I think that the economic terms are always is possible to solve, because you share the risk, and also it's possible to divide the risk in the situation.
And it's a very mixed model of how you can get your co-funding. So like Donna was saying, what a lot of people do is they apportion, staff time if they have funded staff, and then you can have obviously any kind of your normal national sources, but your project can also generate income. It can't generate profit, but it can generate income. So people would have ticket sales, or they might have a publication that they sell. So, I always tell people to kind of to break it down and think, okay, we have to raise 40% of our budget, but it's shared across the partnership, and it's over the course of how long the project lasts. But it's absolutely, it's a barrier for people. But I think, if you have a strong, kind of base and a partnership.
And just to give it the evolution, that we had in the first project a good relation with Glean in Belgium. And Glean presented Polka Theatre in London. And Polka Theatre in the third project presented Baboró Festival. So it's a mechanism that increase through like a big network that can really be developed.
I see a question with the...
Oh yeah, what advice would you guys give to new and upcoming companies who want to make work for each other and who are seeking to kind of form partnerships with companies in other European countries? What advice would you give to companies like that who maybe don't have the means to go and travel to festivals that are overseas, or etc.?
Sorry, I didn't.
So let's say I am a company theatre, and I'd like to make work for children, and I'd like to partner with other artists in European countries. How would you advise that maybe I go about that, or other companies like me who are in a position where they're just starting out, they haven't received state funding, and it's unlikely that, let's say, I get a travel and training award from the Arts Council to travel to a country to meet with a European company.
Okay.
Is that?
I'd say you're in the right place. Which in terms, I suppose, isn't exactly the kind of thing that the festival like this is supporting, is actually engineering and creating the context for that sort of interchange to happen. Not necessarily, it isn't necessarily predicated of where you are in the funding ladder, I'm imagining, but by seeing the work that's happening by the people who are in the room is kind of a really great start and very inspiring in terms of the kind of practice that might not be available elsewhere.
I'm trying to make eye contact with Max. The Arts Council at the moment, we're rolling out a new kind of 10-year strategy called Making Great Art Work. And, for the first time in a while, kind of prioritizing, internationalizing the careers of artists is there as an objective. And there's a lot of people that have started by, coming in and maybe getting an Arts Council bursary to kind of develop their practice and make work. Or like you're saying, the reality is probably what most people I've heard over the years say is that you do have to go and see people's work, and that is, that's the thing I would love to see. And there is some talk in the next Creative Europe program that they'll actually have a mobility strand for artists, because that you've absolutely identified what is needed. There is a gap between kind of a full-scale European project that demands a level of organizational capacity and actually the people starting to make that work. But I would say, definitely look to the Arts Council as a...
I think travel and training is, people are reluctant to apply for it. It's a fund that exists to support students to go and see, and people count themselves out of that fund before they even put an application. But I suppose from our perspective, what we're looking for in travel and training is for you to demonstrate how that opportunity suits you at that very moment. So there's no one template, there's no one way of doing it, it's a very broad thing. And in that sense, in bursts is there as well. Again, we're looking for you to identify what you need at that moment. And again, there's no one template for what people go after in terms of bursary. So people can be reluctant to apply to us because they don't identify as the kind of professional artist that's written down. But our experience is that the successful applications are those that have identified a very specific need, identified how they can address that need in their practice or in their professional development. So my advice certainly is always worth applying for travel and training. Like, don't count yourself out before you've done an application. And it's a rolling application, so you only need to apply 5 weeks in advance of your travel. So if an opportunity comes up that's reasonably short lead in, it's worth going for it. And I suppose the other thing around bursary is the scale at which bursary supports goes from anything up to 15,000, so people can really identify what they need and how much that costs them in terms of their time. And bursaries are about buying your time. So again, people count themselves out of it before they've even gone into it. And I'd say, I suppose particularly in both travel and training and in bursary, it's YPCE focused, so children, young people and education. So we are looking for practitioners that you all are in this room. We're looking for those people to apply and do it. And certainly our sense is that this sector is reasonably reluctant to apply in a way that maybe other sectors are more. So apply.
I wonder, is there a space there for a more advanced mentoring project? I know that there's been mentoring for writers of literature for children, and perhaps a European-wide mentoring project for people like this gentleman over here on my right, young companies who would be mentored by either festivals or other theatre companies, which would facilitate the learning and the sustainability for them.
I think that's
the collaboration and building the expertise for them in partnership with an organisation that is already existing and is experienced.
And I think that's actually a perfect example of a European project, just there. And that's actually what I should have said as well, that these projects can operate as mini funding hubs themselves, and kind of, that idea of actually building capacity for artists to work internationally would absolutely fit within Creative Europe, because I think you're right.
I think it happens unofficially. I know this happens within Baboró, but I think perhaps
because I was going to say, you know, for people, it's a good idea to kind of keep up with, you know, active European projects, because they'll often have calls for artists, you know, kind of mobility calls and kind of residency opportunities and professional development. So, you know, you mightn't be at the stage in your company where you yourself are going to, you know, kind of be a full partner, but you should be kind of looking and seeing, you know, what's happening, because there might be an opportunity there.
Hi, my name is Sinead and I manage a project that's based in Cork actually. It's called Love. And we are actually creating work for very young children from maybe 6 months to 3 years. And we've been doing it since 2010. Now we actually have a team of artists from Dublin, from Spain, from Sweden, who are on a yearly basis creating interactive multidisciplinary work for very small children in childcare settings and in our provisions. Now we've created over the last several years really dynamic, strong, abstract, sensorium-based work, and we actually find that because we're based in Cork, that actually is a bit of a disadvantage because it's hard to get onto kind of a national platform. That we love Baboró, we love Baboró, anything that inspires us. We love our international artists and our local, you know, Fiona Kelleher, Tanisha Munn, George Hanover, but it's very difficult to link in to share the work that we already do in Parts of Weekend. And I'm just wondering, is there a platform to support that process? You know, that would help to promote the artists and also share the experiences that we have with such small children. And we're so lucky that we are funded by Cork and County Arts Council. So it's a very unique project. So it's just that is something for us that we just it's a big question, sorry, but it's just
No, I guess
such a wonderful opportunity to,
you know, certainly through our work as the desk, if we're very, you know, aware of that, and actually, I would say the majority of our events don't happen, you know, in Dublin. So if you feel like, just from the point of view of my work, if you kind of have a group of people that you think would benefit, you know, from kind of hearing, you know, or kind of finding out more, like, get in touch with me, and we absolutely do that. I do that all the time. And then on a higher level of kind of what the EU wants to fund and why they fund it, there's a huge desire to kind of fund hard to reach audiences and places. And one of the things, and I was going to say, and it's on our Facebook page, but at the moment the European Commission is having a consultation around the next program. It's an open public consultation, and one of the things that's coming up is the idea of kind of, you know, kind of ensuring that there's parity between rural and non-urban areas and urban areas. So whether that's any comfort, like the issues you're bringing up would absolutely find a home within, you know, because Europe doesn't want to necessarily fund like you as an organization. They want to fund who you can reach. And if you're engaging with people that wouldn't necessarily have access to European funded projects as a rule, you will, you know what I mean, you will, that will be of benefit to your application.
yeah.
I mean, that's probably not any kind of immediate, you know, help, and that's sometimes what's hard about this job is you are probably talking, you know, 2 years down the line, but as a information point to ourselves, if we are kind of obviously, you know, more than Dublin, we are out in the regions of Now, I did get a wave from someone that I think there might be. Yeah, if there's yeah.
I have still some doubts and questions about the applications because I mean we are from Belgium and we have also a cultural desk,
Yes.
of course, and I'm several times in contact with them also for the bigger network and so on, and each time we feel the uncertainty thing about the application, because sometimes it is delayed, sometimes it's not in the time, sometimes it's not sure that the European Commission will give the money, and so on. Now I have also this very concrete question: what about after 2020? What will happen? You don't know it yet.
I mean,
I'm sure of it. That you
Oh,
don't know
no,
it.
the
No.
only thing I've been told is
So-
the only.
So what can we apply for? Because we did an application for the network, which wasn't granted because it was the last
Yeah.
application. So we have to wait now for 2 more years in case there is coming a new application.
Yeah, I mean, there will be, I mean, just based on past, I mean, unless there's some kind of cataclysmic change, there absolutely will be, you know, another, I would say, networks call, even though, you know, some people might have theories
Yeah.
about it. But I think what always changes is the way you have to frame them. So at the we had a recent kind of culture forum, and when they were drafting this program, this is just a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but it was, culture is going to save the economy, because it was drafted during a big economic downturn, and everything was about culture's capacity to improve Europe's GDP, and that was what you heard the politicians saying.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've kind of started to hear is now there's much more of a kind of social cohesion, you know, that culture is going to actually bring us together, keep us together. It's going to socially integrate all those excluded, you know, groups. So I mean, I think the base of how the program is structured and how it administers funding will be there, but we will have no idea. I mean, the timeline they're saying now is the first draft will go in by the summer. So I think our first indications won't be probably till the end of the year. And it's absolutely frustrating. I mean,
Yeah.
we feel a lot of those same frustrations as well, because we're not getting a huge amount of
Yeah.
communication.
I understand that. I mean, this is quite a big problem still. Certainly if you want to construct something sustainable.
If you want to do any kind of
And
planning,
Yeah.
you know, you would hope that you would have some indication this year. That's what I would say.
And
Okay.
maybe just to answer to you, in fact, what you are saying, this should be a matter also for the network, for the association to cope with. And this is also something we not always deal with, this kind of things. That to welcome you and to see and to have more information about it, and to spread some more information about it. This is something to work for us on for the future. Just to say that, small size.
I don't have a question. It's not necessarily related to Creative Europe, but just to answer the question here. And Björk, I'm here representing TYA Ireland, and we're the representative organisation for Assetej in Ireland. We're a completely voluntary organisation with members, but we act as a point of contact for people who want to work in this area, and we lobby together as a group, and we share information and resources. And at the Assetej Festival that was in Birmingham in 2016, we actually brought 7 young independent artists. We applied to the Arts Council for training and travel awards. So it wasn't individual artists having to apply. TYA applied, and then we brought companies like yourselves and individuals who have, you know, are starting off and don't have funding yet. But we also arrange kind of informal, like there's groups of we call them emerging artists, and we keep trying to find another way to call them, but groups came together to Baboró last year, and Ashleen facilitated them. We've gone to Belfast to Evelyn, and so get in contact with us, and we can be a starting point for introducing you to people that you need to talk to, and we'll bring you with us to festivals and that where we can. And we've also been working with Ashleen on a mentoring programme we started in Baboró last year. I'm here until the middle of the day tomorrow. Come and find me.
Can I add to that exactly what Mags was proposing earlier has been what's happened to me, and through Small Size Connections as well, I think has been a fantastic journey. I am an individual artist. I represent myself. I do small scale work.
I do advocacy work. I attend through the congresses in Asset as an individual artist, and I've had fantastic support. And maybe I'm lucky from the Arts Council, and my practice and vision has grown directly because of that as an Irish artist. I've been given travel and training, not always, but when it was really, when I really valued from it myself, and bursary recently as well, to follow on from that, to do more research for me and see where it's going next. So it's absolutely possible.
I think people almost, like Max was saying, it's like
Go for it.
they just edit themselves out
Yeah.
before they even.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes the bureaucracy is so big.
But these actually aren't. They're
we
they're
tried
okay.
to do 3 projects
Bureaucracy
which
is
didn't
okay.
work. And it's a big amount of work. It still is. And it's also, it stays a problem to find some model fairlands.
I mean, that's why we're so happy that there's a co-fund in Ireland,
Yeah.
because the reality is that. like,
But you
it's
have that
huge.
advantage. We have that not in Belgium.
But we're now attracting partners.
Okay, great.
Come and find us. So will we break now for a glass of wine, or is it, yes, talk too much?
I just want to just thank Katie and Roberto and Donna.